Here I am on Tutankhamun Common. Fantastically beautiful. Very lovely spot. Flowers. Feels like spring is in full swing. And very lucky to be able to go for a walk here on a regular basis. Something I've been doing much more during this time. And hopefully we'll continue to. Scene of life in lockdown Tooting, a bus going past, a few people out for a walk. On the face of it, just a really beautiful day. Certainly very chill, probably more slow paced than before, but yeah, very typical scenes. People out for their exercise, walking the dogs, etc. See, in many ways it's quite an Arcadian vision of the city. Before all this, a place like a park or forest at a park would be pretty empty on a weekday lunchtime. Possibly just one or two people walking their dogs or whatever. But now it's positively full of people enjoying these precious amenities of the city. And if you think one good thing could come out of this, then possibly much more of a kind of living city approach, where every bit of green space and blue space and whatever is really turned over to healthy lifestyles and recreation for everyone. I can see it happening. Certainly for me at least, I'm getting there slowly. So standing here right next to what effectively is a kind of giant outdoor athletics track, owned by the local authority here, Wandsworth Council, and as you can see, it is huge, and also just really cool thing to look at. Yeah, athletics tracks, obviously, we're used to seeing them on the Olympics and athletics championships and things like that, so it sort of brings back good memories of sporting achievements and what have you. But also looking at it, it's closed now, but you think, yeah, one day that's going to be open again. You're going to have some really fun exercise for the people who are into that kind of stuff. But it kind of gets me thinking that having an enormous space like that, fenced up, as you can see, quite a significant fence, seems a bit of a waste in the present situation. It's huge in there, loads of space, absolutely heaps of space. If people wanted to walk in a safe manner, or exercise in a safe manner, you think that would be entirely possible. Maybe it will become possible again soon. So there you have it. I've just had my state-mandated bout of daily exercise here on Tooting Common. Super beautiful, super green, amazing spot to go for a walk. Very lucky to live near it. Fortunately, in a city like London, we actually have quite a lot of green spaces, parks, commons, what have you. So I imagine a lot of other people right now, this Tuesday lunchtime, would be doing very similar thing to me. Certainly I've seen other people on their bikes, walking their dogs, exercising, all very cordially and happily. Certainly an interesting part of our lives now. I was watching the news earlier, and there was Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister of Scotland, talking about how to keep happy and healthy during this time, saying things like, make sure you don't watch too much television news, which obviously is interesting because it feels very important to know what's going on right now and to watch the news, but to get just the right amount, not too much, not too little. And certainly the kind of nature of how we get out and enjoy these spaces fade, and it's at times been a bit fiery. Someone I know says that in their local park there's a man there who watches everybody, takes pictures and kind of complains and accuses people of not abiding by the rules. Don't know if that's quite in the spirit of what we need right now. More a kind of good-humoured conviviality is probably the better way to get people to behave. But anyway, it's a really interesting topic, and I think I suspect that will have lasting implications for the way we use public spaces. Anyway, more to discuss this evening. So, welcome to the show and good evening. My name is Merlin Fulcher. This evening it is the 21st of April, Tuesday. So I've been thinking a lot about social distancing, about our mandated exercise and also masks. And these are big topics, and they've been big topics in the news, particularly today, because there's this idea that the government need to kind of make a ruling here, an announcement about specifically about masks. But I think all these things are quite closely related, obviously, and I think they seem like big issues, but I think really they touch on things to do with sort of routine and in some ways what you could describe as etiquette. Now, I think really routine is such an important part of what it means really to be a human being. I mean, we all have things we do, things we like doing. A lot of that's on hold right now, and for some people can't even go outside at all because they're socially isolating entirely, so effectively self-quarantining, and their entire routine of their life is on hold. For others, going to work, other things aren't really happening outside of the home, and so we're having to create new routines. And we all know that exercise is good for the body, and it's also certainly good for the mind. We're going through an enormously traumatic time right now, so one would think that really as many of your sort of traditional routines that you can keep up, that helps because that provides continuity, and also like good new positive routines you can keep going. This is good as well. But certainly when it comes to what we're allowed, we're effectively being told we can have 1 hour of exercise a day. And we should continue to social distance and try and stay 2 meters away from people. And I think this has caused a bit of tension, particularly at the beginning of the lockdown. And we had a lot of images in the media on the first week. This is a photo taken on Clapham Common, a place I know well, and effectively this was from the first weekend, and there was a lot of panic at the time that people weren't following the restrictions correctly. So this image shows a path. It was used to demonstrate an article effectively saying that people weren't following the rules. I think that's a bit of an unfair use of an image like this, because this is a telephoto lens, and that has an effect of compressing what's going on. So I think in this image I can see quite a lot of solo people who are actually quite a fair distance away from each other. The big issue is actually, I think, in the centre of the image, there's a lady there and she's wearing a mask, she's in a mobility chair, and clearly these other people aren't giving space for her, but then also they have buggies. So it's a bit of a tricky sort of pavement jam scenario, where really it probably would have been better if people had slowed down and allowed each other to pass with much more space between them. Now the problem with this bit of the path on Clapham Common, and especially at that time of year, it was still quite muddy on the ground, and you can see a lot of people have got quite nice smart shoes, and they're probably a bit reluctant to step onto the mud and ruin their shoes or have to clean their shoes later when they got home. It hasn't rained much at all in the last few weeks, and it's pretty bone dry out there. So right now it's a much easier situation where you can just step on the dry grass. You won't get any mud on you at all. So really, I think this was quite a kind of unique scenario for that weekend. Typically, I'd say with Clapham Common, when I go there, I would just wear boots and walk on the grass. I think although London's is a big metropolitan city, there's still lots of kind of semi-rural spaces where it's muddy and you're better off wearing wellies or boots. But anyway, I think the images like this were used a bit out of context. The one thing I'd say in its favour for Clapham Common is it's big and it's open. There's lots of different places where you can access the park without going near to other people. That's very different from Richmond Park, and this is an image from the same weekend. Richmond Park is a huge park, stunningly beautiful, but it has a gate all the way around it, a fence all the way around it, and that means you can only access it through certain gates. And as you can imagine, those certain gates end up being quite crowded places where you can't really socially distance in such an effective way. Now again, this photo was taken that weekend, and it was used to demonstrate people not following the rules. I would say in this photo people look fairly spaced apart. Obviously they're in household groups, so this couple might be together, these families here on the right. I don't really necessarily think anyone's breaking the rules in this photo, but there were other photos showing cyclists kind of congregating, and and it also kind of just added to this idea that people weren't being as cautious as they should. Now, certainly, I would say Richmond Park is probably, because of those entrance points, it's actually slightly harder to socially distance within this space, and it would probably be better if it didn't have a giant fence around it, but then it's a deer park, so you have to keep those animals in. They have actually put restrictions in now, so you can't drive in the park, and I think there's some cycling restrictions as well, and that's effectively reduced the number of people, because traditionally people would drive here in Park, and I think that's sort of visually brought the situation under control. But I think what I'm trying to say here is that part of the reality of this is that actually the visual aesthetics of how we behave in public space is important, although sometimes the rationality of that has to be set aside, and we have to sort of visually position ourselves and demonstrate that we're trying our best to create an image and set a good example of social distancing. Now, I think that, again, we've had some quite sort of unfortunate instances and images of, effectively, this is a policeman, I'm sure very politely, talking to a young couple and explaining to them that maybe they can't sit in the park, maybe they can't sunbathe. Now, I think possibly this is done with the best of intentions, but I think that things like this, I think it comes across as a bit heavy-handed, and I think also things like this can have quite unintended consequences and legacies. I think some people are really shy, and I think for some people, being told off by a police officer could be absolutely mortifying, and it's the last thing anybody would ever want to do, be on the receiving end of, no matter how polite and pleasant the experience might be attempting to be. And I think this was unfortunate, and I think we probably moved beyond the phase where things like this are happening. I think for the most part, anybody who's out and about using public space is trying their best to follow the rules. Certainly, I'm seeing that here where I am in London, and if anything, the concern is that some people are trying to socially distance so much that they're really not going out when they really should possibly be going out, getting some exercise and uplifting their mood generally. I think we've moved beyond this phase, and I think we possibly won't see more instances of these kind of visuals. Although there is the kind of ongoing topic, which is the joggers. Now, classically, park wardens would always be engaged in, and parks police would always be engaged in sort of disputes between cyclists, joggers, and dog walkers. But I think that situation's possibly improved. I think that generally cyclists are very well trying their best right now to go slow and to avoid busy places. Dog walkers keeping the dogs under control, keeping the dogs on leads. I think with joggers, I mean, the gyms are closed. I mean, people need to exercise. It's really important to get out and to do stuff like this. And London's parks have always been full of people jogging. I mean, that's just a natural, normal thing, and it's important that we kind of keep natural, normal things happening, because we're humans. That's how our society works. That's what keeps people feeling happy, to think things are normal. But I guess with the joggers, certainly in my experience, I've seen loads of joggers. Some of them probably do jog a bit too close, and sometimes you always feel like the breath is coming on you. I think that's very rare. I think for the most part, every jogger I've come across has given other people loads of space, has been very patient. And then again, also you see a lot of people wearing masks, and effectively with a mask, it's not so much about protecting you, but it's about protecting other people around you. So I think what we're really seeing is actually lots of our sort of routines continuing, but also possibly a bit more of a regard for other people and a bit more consideration. On the topic of masks, effectively the main thing we're hearing back from the government is in its press briefings is that the idea is that if although masks could possibly help in terms of reducing the impact of this disease, coronavirus, there's a feeling that if you told everyone to have a mask, then there would be a drain on the kind of precious resource of the mask, which we desperately need for the NHS workers and key workers and other people. Now, I think that there's some pretty cool graphics out there. This one gives you a kind of example of how your cough or sneeze could spread if you're not wearing a mask. I think a lot of people, if you do have a cough or a sneeze, they've got the message and they're staying at home for the 7 to 14 days to get over it. However, if you're out and about in a supermarket, sometimes it's a busy place. Sometimes you're queuing for a post office. It's a busy place. You never really know. Someone could sneeze for hay fever reasons, and that could make other people feel quite uncomfortable, and it could even make people panic, which is the last thing we really want. So you can see why wearing a mask on your own face, which can help sort of contain that more, is a prudent thing to do. Now, inevitably, probably the best thing on top of that and before that is really just socially distancing. Don't go in the busy supermarkets if you have an option not to. For my part, I'm personally just going to the local stores at night when they're empty, and I'm washing stuff when I get it home. But again, if wearing a mask, if it is a busy place, wearing a mask could potentially make other people feel comfortable. One thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of people wearing really cool looking masks, and this is another sort of trait of human behaviour. People like to demonstrate their individuality. People like to make a fashion statement, and there's so many people wearing masks now in the street that it effectively has become a kind of fashion statement. And something like what this lady's wearing here, there's no doctor or NHS worker who would necessarily be using something like this because doesn't meet the specification of what's required. So I don't really see how something like this isn't a problem. Likewise, someone just wearing a scarf over their face or creating something really cool at home. So I mean, and this sort of stuff, people are designing them, people are making them, and they'll be available in shops. So I think in a way, there's something to be said for if this can become a fashion and it is rooted in a kind of consideration for other people. Surely that's harmless, and I think so. Really, when I think about these things, I would certainly say that as many of our kind of human social routines that we can keep and enhance during this period, and as much consideration that we can have for other people, as much we can learn about ourselves and about what makes us comfortable and about what makes other people comfortable. These are all natural and continuous things which actually kind of flourish during this crisis, and one might think will continue after. So I hope that's been interesting. Do share your thoughts on this. I know it's a contentious and interesting topic. For me, I'm wearing a bicycle mask, which is really comfy and I think looks pretty cool. But I'm not necessarily wearing it when I'm wandering across the park and there's nobody about. But certainly, if I'm in a situation where there's people, I would. I hope that's been interesting, and stay tuned for more updates. Do subscribe and let me know your thoughts. Okay, good night.